Hello and welcome back to this workshop on the publication of trachoma survey data, run by Tropical Data and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Before we get started, we would like to sincerely thank all our partners involved in the running of Tropical Data. We would also like to thank everyone involved in the creation of this workshop, which was run in collaboration with the Ethiopian Health Ministry and the Fred Hollows Foundation and RTI International for funding the workshop and development of these online access materials. In this session, we will be going over how to write the methods section of your manuscript. After this, you will have sessions on the results and discussion sections, as well as how to format and prepare your manuscript for submission. Let's start by talking about how to plan the methods section of the manuscript. The purpose of the methods section is to describe how you generated the results that you will present, to allow people to judge whether they can trust the study data. A major strength of tropical data-supported surveys is that they follow WHO-approved protocols and have rigorous input from and review by epidemiologists with lots of experience working in trachoma. The following resources will be useful and time-saving in the process of writing your manuscript. Firstly, previous GTMP and tropical data papers are good examples of how survey data have been published in the past. Second, all tropical data surveys must have protocol documents written and approved before the surveys can start. Often these will be reviewed by several people and contain methodological details about how the studies were planned. There are also international consensus guidelines on what information is needed to make a robust assessment of the data. We will now talk about which sections must be included in the methods section as per the Strobe Checklist. The elements that are important to include within the methods section are ethics and consent, study design and participant selection, training, clinical assessment, WASH data collection, and data management and analysis. The Strobe guidelines recommend that within the methods you should outline study design, setting, participants, variables, data sources, and measurement, bias, study site, quantitative variables, and statistical methods. When talking about ethics and consent, you should mention whether you received national-level ethical approval, along with any relevant references, such as from a government ethics board, or if you received an ethics waiver. You should also outline any additional institutional approval that was received, for example from partners, and you should detail that Tropical Data has approval from LSHTM to support surveys. You must outline the process by which participants gave consent to take part, including a statement on whether it was verbal or written. Remember, verbal consent for examination is always recorded in the Tropical Data app. And what was the age of the majority of participants and how consent was obtained for children to take part. You can also mention how people with trachoma or other ocular pathology were treated. In the study design section, you should consider that the aim of the study is to estimate trachoma prevalence and therefore mention that your sample size is planned for that. These papers may assist with this. The links are in the video description. You should also state how the EUs were selected, for example, whether they have been surveyed before, or, if not, how they were deemed to need surveys. The method should explicitly state precisely how the clusters were selected, for example, using a probability proportional to size method. How households were selected, for example, using compact segment sampling, and who was examined in each household. By covering what we discussed on the previous slide, you meet the following recommendations from the checklist. It is particularly important to describe the system of field team training. Even trachoma experts disagree on trachoma grading sometimes, so demonstrating the robust training scheme that tropical data graders need to go through helps show the readers that the grading in your surveys was reliable. The tropical data training system for graders includes taught theory, a photograph inter-grader agreement or IGA test, and a live subject IGA, whilst the system for recorders includes taught theory, recognition of WASH facilities, and a recorder reliability test. Graders and recorders who pass these tests then practice working together. When discussing clinical assessment, it's useful to include details on the magnification and illumination used by graders, the grading system used, the use of follicle size guides to aid TF diagnosis, and the precise description of TT grading. For example, whether it is upper and lower trichiasis or upper eyelid trichiasis only, as per the latest WHO TT definition. This is described in the amended WHO simplified grading system, which can be seen in the video description. Or whether participants are considered to be unknown to the health system or not. The next section to consider is water sanitation and hygiene, or WASH data collection. The GTMP and Tropical Data WASH questionnaires were adapted from the WHO and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program, or JMP, household questionnaire. The answers are then categorized using definitions from the WHO UNICEF JMP. You can refer to the GTMP Methodology paper for further details. See the link in the video description. It's worth mentioning that water sources are assessed by questions asked to the household head, whereas latrines and hand-washing facilities are assessed by direct observation. Covering these details would ensure the Strobe Checklist recommendations on variables and data sources are met. Finally, in the Data Management and Analysis section, you should describe how prevalence is estimated and how confidence intervals are generated. These figures are generated by the Tropical Data team, and details of their analysis pipelines are described in the GTMP Methods paper. You can also include information about how WASH service levels were categorized, or assessment of prevalence changed since the last survey should be included, depending on what analyses you include in your manuscript. A final point to include is that data entry through the Tropical Data app using the Android devices, and the near real-time data review. Again, these sections are explicitly recommended in the Strobe guidelines. Now let us discuss some general guidance for writing the methods section. The methods section should be ordered in the order that the study was carried out and structured with subheadings. The methods should be specific and detailed enough to enable someone to repeat your study if they wanted to, so it's best to include as much information as possible. For example, if 2 methods were used to estimate sample size in different surveys, both should be described. It can feel natural to include background information in the methods, for example through describing the criteria for elimination to justify your sample size calculation. However, the content of the method should be direct description of how the study was carried out. So in the example here, it would be better to move the background information to the introduction and just to include the method detailing the methods. Finally, we will highlight some other helpful resources which can provide more information about writing the methods. We already mentioned the previous GTMP Tropical Data papers, survey protocols, and the Strobe guidelines. The Tropical Data website has a resources section where Tropical Data training manual and protocol writing guides are available, and where there is lots of guidance about how best to use data generated by these surveys. A couple of other useful resources for writing papers are listed on this slide. You can access these by clicking on the links provided in the video description. Hopefully by now, following the last sessions, you have identified the authorship group and written the introduction. Now, please draft the methods section. The next session is on writing the results, so before you do that session, do make sure you have access to the appropriate data files. Guidance on how to access these files is available in the next video. Thank you for attending this session, and we hope to see you in the next video session.